Welcome back. We're talking about the U.S. prison at the Guantanamo Bay Naval Air Station on the island of Cuba. The prison remains open today despite President Obama's commitment to closing it. Joining us now, Gadeir Abbas is a human rights attorney and activist. Gadeir, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Closing the prison was one of President Obama's big election promises, but as I mentioned, it still remains open. Why has it been so difficult to close this prison?
President Obama hasn't been able to close this prison because President Obama has never really tried to close it. He's only really tried to move the prison to the continental United States. And part of the reason why the idea of Guantanamo Bay is still strong and still supported by all of the Republican presidential candidates is because the United States has come up with this idea that they need to abandon the rule of law for a class of prisoners. And that idea has been discredited by the passage of time. There have been 800 people that have been detained at Guantanamo Bay. More than 600 have been released thus far, and that's a 75% wrong rate. There are people that are now detained in Guantanamo Bay. Of the 91 that are left, about a third have, in the United States' eyes, have no reason to be detained further. But the United States sought a place where it could torture people and interrogate people outside of what it wanted to be the jurisdiction of federal courts. The U.S. courts, to some of its credit, has discredited that idea. Guantanamo Bay continues to. No one has been held accountable for its extrajudicial actions of torture and unlawful detention.
Right, and does the administration here have a point when it says U.S. law doesn't apply there? I mean, what's the legal basis for that?
The Supreme Court held about a decade that the Guantanamo within the jurisdiction of the U.S. courts. But it says something about the U.S. system of justice that the prior administration, the Bush administration, deliberately sought a location on Guantanamo Bay for the purpose of evading jurisdiction. That argument did not work in court, but what we've had since then is an ongoing debacle where the United States sets up an unlawful system of adjudicating the claims against the people held at Guantanamo Bay. Courts find those systems to be unlawful for a variety of reasons, and on it goes. And so far, the overwhelming majority of people at Guantanamo Bay, even in the United States government's eyes, are innocent of wrongdoing. And that's why we have a criminal justice system. We have a criminal justice system to provide a check on the United States executive branch. Without that check, the executive branch will always make mistakes, and they'll always err on the side of depriving innocent people of their rights.
So let's look at some of the political and security implications of this prison. It's this prison that's in Cuba that's actually acted as a big recruitment poster for militant groups that want to recruit. When they look at what's going on there and what we're hearing, I mean, it's easy for them to demonize the United States as being this Islamophobic nation that's imprisoning people without trial, without charges, etc. I mean, do they have a point?
Of course. There was a New York Times columnist years ago that once commented on the two-tier system of justice in the United States. There's one for Muslims and one for non-Muslims. And the Guantanamo Bay adjudication system is an example of the crown jewel of that two-tiered system. Of course, the Guantanamo Bay is a recruitment tool for enemies, but that's not the only reason why it should be abandoned. It should be abandoned first and foremost because our greatest bulwark against our enemies is not torturing people in a facility that we acquired because of Cuba being a small nation and us being able to take some of their land. Our system of justice is what we're fighting for, and we should advocate for the application of the rule of law even against these unpopular, scary people in Guantanamo Bay.
There's been a lot of controversy, of course, over this prison and the people being held there. I want you to take a listen to what the commander of the guard force at the prison camp, U.S. Army Colonel David Heath, had to say about the prison and the people being held there. Let's watch.
I treat them the way I would want to be treated if I was a prisoner of war or whatever. So that's what I emphasize with my guards and insist that that's how we behave here. We don't abuse people here. We don't torture anyone. We don't. I don't go out of my way to make people miserable.
What do you make of that?
Well, it's ludicrous that there's only 10 people in Guantanamo Bay that are even facing charges. The plan for many of the rest is to just hold them without charge indefinitely forever. While the rough edges of the Guantanamo Bay endeavor have been shaved off, the enduring injustice of Guantanamo Bay has been and is now the indefinite detention of people that have not been charged with any crime. And 800 people have been detained without, almost 800 people have been detained without any charges at all, and that is something that should bother us all.
Very quickly, 5 seconds I have. Do you believe that Guantanamo will be closed down by President Obama, or will it just continue?
Guantanamo Bay will continue, unfortunately, until the foreseeable future.
Gadeir Abbas, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.